Mommy, I'm okay, but all of my friends are dead. Imagine your child telling you this. Imagine your child seeing their friends dead in a pool of their own blood. This phrase was indeed told to a mother by her 6-year-old daughter after the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. This shooting claimed the lives of 26 people and was the second deadliest school shooting to occur on American soil. Over the past 2.5 decades, school shootings have intensified in deadliness and frequency. Just 37 days ago, a female shooter opened fire at a private Christian elementary school in Nashville, Tennessee, killing 3 9-year-olds and 3 adults. This must stop. Lives must be saved. Since Columbine in 1999, school shootings have increased drastically, showing the need for safer schools. And while installing metal detectors and arming teachers can help with this issue, the best solution lies with us and our involvement in the community. Today, I will be discussing the different types of school shootings and school shooters, the factors leading up to a school shooting, and the frequency of school shootings. Then I will discuss some of the more commonly known preventative measures, such as gun control and installing metal detectors. Lastly, I will discuss how we can prevent school shootings before they start by identifying the warning signs and becoming more involved in our community. School shootings and school shooters are defined in different ways and under different categories. But despite how we define them, the fact still remains the same. Hundreds of school shootings have occurred and will continue to occur if nothing is done. Throughout this speech, the definition for school shootings that I will use includes any time a gun is discharged at a school, regardless of the number injured or killed. This definition fits the majority of the mass school shootings that have occurred across America. School shootings can be subcategorized into 2 major categories: planned and accidental. A planned school shooting is when the shooter prepares for his attack months, if not years, ahead of the actual attack. This shooting generally comprises the majority of the mass school shootings, and I will be focusing on this shooting throughout my speech. The second type of school shootings, accidental school shootings, generally occur when younger children find a gun at home and bring it to school to show their friends. As they are showing it to their friends, the gun accidentally discharges, killing or injuring other people. The planned school shooting is carried out by the prepared school shooter, and the prepared school shooter can be categorized into 3 major categories: psychopathic, psychotic, and traumatized. Merriam-Webster defines a psychopath as a person having an egocentric and antisocial personality, marked by a lack of remorse for one's actions, an absence of empathy for others, and often criminal tendencies. Eric Harris, who carried out the joint attack on Columbine High School in 1999, fit under this category of shooter. Eric only cared about himself and what benefited him. The second type of school shooter, unlike psychopathic shooters, actually has a mental disorder. Dr. Langman, a psychologist who specializes in school shooters and who was taught at the FBI Academy, points out that psychotic shooters are not fully in touch with reality, meaning that they have hallucinations or delusion. Nicholas Cruz, who carried out the attack against Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in 2018, fit under this category of shooter. After the attack was over and after Nicholas's arrest, during the police interview, Nicholas referenced a demon that caused him to shoot up the school. The third type of shooter, traumatized shooters, generally have problems going on at home. Peter Langman defines a traumatized shooter as someone who comes from severely dysfunctional families where there is parental substance abuse, domestic violence, physical abuse, sexual abuse, or a combination of these. Mitchell Johnson, a lesser-known shooter who carried out the joint sniper attack against Westside Middle School in 1998, fit under this category of shooter. Prior to the attack, Mitchell came from an alcoholic and abusive home. His dad both drank and had physically abused Mitchell. Regardless of the type of shooter, all 3 types do not just suddenly decide to go on mindless rampages. They're planning their shootings months, if not years ahead of the attack. And there are several factors that cause somebody to shoot up a school. The leading factor is depression or rejection. The American Psychological Organization, in a 2012 paper, reported that in 2003, Leary and colleagues analyzed 15 cases of school shooters and found all but 2 suffered from social rejection. Both Nicholas Cruz and Mitchell Johnson had experienced romantic rejection prior to their attack. This feeling of rejection or depression builds up inside the shooter until he decides to vent it by gunning down others. Violent media also has a profound impact on a school shooter's murderous ideology. In his book, Why Kids Kill, Dr. Langman points out that having killed people thousands of times in video games or in their imagination may desensitize a school shooter to violence and make it easier for them to pull the trigger for for real. Though few people who play violent video games actually commit a school shooting, those that are already planning on committing an attack use violent media and violent video games to help them mentally prepare for their attack. Social media and the internet also play a huge impact in a school shooter's ideology. An article published by Psychology Today points out that the consensus of social scientists is that highly publicized stories of deviant and dangerous behavior influences copycat incidents. Social media allows a shooter to share his plans with the world, and after the attack is over, social media will sometimes glorify the shooter. In my interview with Dr. Langman, the author of many books and articles on school shooters, he pointed out that he thinks social media and the internet probably does infect shooters because a lot of shooters cite the desire to become known, to be famous. With the 24-hour news cycle, the internet, we know what happens everywhere in the world if we want to. That information is accessible. A major attack often gets global coverage, and multiple shooters have cited that as a desire of theirs. They want to become famous, just like so-and-so did. Social media and the internet allow us to research anybody, anytime, anywhere. Rejection, desensitization, and imitation all play into a school shooter's murderous ideology. Now that we know some of the factors that cause a shooter's rampage, we will analyze the frequency of school shootings throughout America. School shootings are relatively rare, but they still occur multiple times every year. A 2019 CDC study found that school-associated homicides consistently represent less than 2% of all youth homicides in the United States. This percentage goes to prove how safe our schools actually are throughout the majority of the year. But while they are relatively obscure, they still have killed hundreds of our children. The Washington Post and the K-12 school shooting database says that over 600 people have died in close to 2,000 school shootings. School shootings may be rare, but they still threaten the lives and safety of our children. There has also been a rise in school shootings over the past several decades. An article from Education Week reporting on the rise in school shootings commented, quote, "Schools across the country saw a rise in cyberbullying, student behavioral issues, and school shootings over 10 years, concluding with the 2019-2020 school year, according to the latest baseline federal data on school crime and safety. School shootings have kept increasing despite the numerous attempts made to stop them. Again, Education Week reports that there were 93 school shootings with casualty at public and private schools in 2019-2020, the most at that point since the 2000-2001 school year, according to the K-12 school shooting database. With the number of school shootings happening in America each year, the question naturally arises of what can be done to prevent the next school shooting. In order to prevent school shootings, politicians have proposed several methods: gun control, arming teachers, installing metal detectors, to name a few. But often overlooked by the media, identifying the warning signs is the biggest preventative measure to be taken. First, many people will claim that gun control can help prevent the next school shooting. In reality, this preventative measure would do nothing to deter a school shooter. In my interview with Dr. Langman, he pointed out that in the majority of cases involving juvenile perpetrators, they are just getting legally owned firearms from their parents or older brothers or grandparents that have not been properly secured. There are close to 400 million guns in America. That is more guns than there are people. So obtaining a gun from another person is extremely easy. For example, in the 1998 Westside Middle School shooting, both shooters were under the age of 15 and had stolen the guns from one of their shooters' grandparents' home. Shooters that are under the age of 18 generally steal their firearms, while those that are over the age of 18 can just legally purchase them. A study conducted by the National Institute of Justice found that in cases involving K-12 school shootings, over 80% of individuals who engaged in shootings stole guns from family members. Gun control would therefore have very little impact, if any, on school shootings and school shooters. Arming teachers and implementing metal detectors could help prevent accidental school shootings, but would likely do very little to prevent the planned school shooting. First off, metal detectors would be very hard to maintain. In my interview with Officer Higgins, the Milford Junior High School resource officer, he explained that it would just require the school to sit down and weigh the pros of possibly detecting the weapon coming in versus the cons of having to manage it, provide the funding for those machines, and provide the people that can actually use them and monitor them as students are walking in the building. Metal detectors can cost anywhere between $2,000 to $5,000 per unit. But though the cost to buy one is relatively inexpensive, the cost to maintain one is much more expensive. In South Carolina, a House bill was put forward showing the impact in the budget for installing metal detectors. It showed the non-reoccurring cost to install 3 walk-through metal detectors at each of 1,200 schools is $14,400,000. Now, if the metal detectors require dedicated staffing, using assumptions similar to those used for state agencies, the recurring cost to school districts could be $98,277,000 or more. Staffing metal detectors would be 7 times more costly than the cost to purchase them. In addition, the staff for the metal detectors would require very skilled training, especially in the legality surrounding searching the students. Metal detectors could help prevent accidental school shootings by detecting the gun in a kid's backpack, but arming teachers would create the possibility for the quick neutralization of any school shooter. But before arming teachers could go into effect, there are many hurdles that need to be overcome. School Resource Officer Brent Higgins pointed out that he would hate to think that teachers have to have that additional obligation in their career function. Now, they not only have to teach the kids, but their main function is also to protect them. The biggest thing that comes with that is the training. In the state of Ohio, police have 737 hours of initial training and 24 hours of yearly training, according to the Institute for Criminal Justice Training Reform. If we arm teachers, they would require more training than police officers do, especially since that they not only have to teach the kids and protect them, but now they would also have to neutralize the shooter as quickly as possible. Arming teachers could also lead to several undesirable situations, such as the student obtaining the weapon or the teacher leaving the weapon behind. Arming teachers would also not go into effect until the shooting has already started. So how can we prevent school shootings before the shooter even arrives? The biggest way is by identifying the warning signs. Dr. Langman, in his book Warning Signs, points out that in most school shootings, particularly large-scale attacks that were planned well in advance, there were warning signs. These warning signs come in many different forms, from a social media post talking about some big day to the warning of friends not to come to school. So what exactly are these warning signs, and how do we identify and report them? Warning signs, the hints that shooters give of their impending attack, come in 2 different ways: leakage and attack-related behavior. Leakage is, according to a former FBI agent, very specific because it is the shooter talking about what they're going to do before they do it. Leakage can be in the form of threats towards others, sharing plans with others, boasting to others, warning others, admiring or imitating others, and even recruiting others. All of these signs are very obvious and should be reported immediately. The second type of warning signs, attack-related behavior, can be harder to spot if one does not personally know the shooter. Attack-related behavior is, according to Langman, any behavior related to preparing for an attack. This includes selecting the victims, planning, serving, obtaining the weapons, practicing, experimenting, and even recruiting others. Not all of these have to be present for somebody to display attack-related behavior. Now that we have identified the 2 types of warning signs, leakage and attack-related behavior, what do we do with this knowledge? We have to report it. Many school shooters gave off warning signs before they committed their attack. Why were they not stopped? People failed to report the warning signs for many reasons. The biggest reason being fear. People are afraid of overreacting, afraid of hurting or stigmatizing others, afraid of being called a tattletale. They also may not want to believe that their friend, grandson, or son could commit such a horrendous crime. They also may view the shooter as nice or charming. But no matter who it is, we have to report the warning signs to the nearest teacher, school resource officer, or principal, or any other capable adult. In addition, many schools have anonymous tip lines that allow one to report without having that fear of being called a tattletale. In my interview with Officer Doug Hale, I asked him, what can we do to help prevent school shootings? He said that if you hear something, you need to say something. It is critical to report the warning signs to the proper people. The U.S. Department of Justice gives a perfect example of properly reporting the warning signs. According to them, a freshman commented on how easy it would be to kill people during a fire drill or bomb threat. The students he told reported this to the principal, who reported this to the police. The police, after apprehending the shooter and conducting a search on the shooter's home, found sufficient evidence to detain the shooter. The students told the principal, and the principal told the police. This is all part of a threat assessment. Threat assessment is, according to the Texas School Safety Center, a fact-based, systematic process designed to identify, inquire, assess, and manage potentially dangerous or violent situations. A key goal is to distinguish between an individual who makes a threat versus one who poses a threat. Threat assessment seeks to distinguish between a false and a real alarm by looking at previous records, statements, and papers. Threat assessment is crucial towards prevention, but in order for it to be effective, a complete investigation must be carried out. In 2013, at Arapahoe High School in Colorado, Carl Pearson shot and killed one other person before committing suicide. Arapahoe High School had a threat assessment team in place and had conducted a threat assessment on Carl, but had failed to follow through with a complete investigation. Carl Pearson then shot and killed one other person. Reporting the warning signs is one of the biggest preventative measures, but in order to be in a position to spot them, we have to become more involved in the community. The first step to becoming involved in the community is to be becoming more involved in the family. NPR, in an article on school shooters, noted that many, though not all of the perpetrators, have experienced significant childhood traumas, such as physical or emotional abuse, and unstable families with violent, absent, or alcoholic parents or siblings, for example, and most have experienced significant losses. Many shooters have come from unstable homes at some point in their childhood. A stable family life is important, if not vital, to the nurturing of our children. Sadly, over the past few decades, the family life has deteriorated. From 1970 to 1997, the divorce rate tripled. While family life has deteriorated, mass shootings have increased. We also need to see more involvement by the parents. In a study conducted by Penn State, researchers noted that adolescents who experienced higher levels of parental warmth in the early teen years reported feeling more closeness and warmth with mothers and fathers when they were in their 20s. Sadly today, many teens are not loved by their parents, but rather neglected. In a BBC article, it was noted that tens of thousands of teenagers are being neglected in some way by parents who do not check up on them or offer enough support. In the scriptures, many verses are devoted to the parent's role in the family. In Deuteronomy, Israel is explicitly commanded to teach them the law diligently to your children, and you shall talk of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way, when you lie down and when you rise. Later on in the New Testament, when Paul is addressing the Ephesian church, he specifically admonishes fathers, saying, "Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord." The second step to becoming involved in the community is to becoming more involved in the schools. The CDC reported in a recent publication that school-based activities can make a profound difference in the lives of teens with a relatively small infusion of support to schools. Schools should seek to support teens and help teens through this critical stage of life. This could be as simple as upperclassmen asking younger students how they are doing, or as complex as people getting together after school for a club or activity. In addition to becoming more involved in the schools, we also need to have more face-to-face interaction rather than just interacting through our online social platforms. A study analyzing the negative effects of social media reported that researchers found an increase in Instagram usage led to a decrease in relationship satisfaction and an increase in conflict and negative outcomes. Furthermore, the dissatisfaction, conflict, and negative outcomes triggered an addictive use of Instagram. We have become far too dependent on our mobile devices. For example, Instagram has over 2 billion global users. We also spend far too much screen time per day on our devices. Common Sense Media, conducting a survey in 2021, analyzing the time teens and tweens spent on social media, found that on average, 8 to 12-year-olds use about 5.5 hours of screen media per day, while 13 to 18-year-olds use about 8.5 hours of screen media. These unsurprising numbers go to prove that we spend the majority of our day on social media. We also need to see an increase in the awareness for mental health issues and crime. In my interview with Brent Higgins, he pointed out that it comes down to the awareness and communications between the students, the parents, and the school community. It is vital that we are involved in the community and can communicate our concerns easily to the proper people. Sure, if we were on our social media, we might be able to spot more warning signs, but if we were personally involved in others' lives, would there be as many warning signs to find? Over the past 3 decades, many school shootings could have been averted if people had simply reported the warning signs and had been more engaged in the shooter's life. Many school shootings have occurred, and they will continue to increase in frequency and deadliness if we do nothing. We as parents, friends, teachers, and mentors have to come alongside each other and support one another. School shootings have become far too normal. We as a community have to step up and to interact with each other more. We have to report harmful speech to the proper authorities. School shootings should not threaten our children's lives. They need to stop. We need to take action. Thank you.